Welcome to Literary Journeys with River. Today, we bring you the summary of Onyx Storm, Book 3 of the Empyrean series. Remember, this is just a summary, not the full book. If you enjoy our content, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Also, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. It's the best way to help YouTube recommend this channel. Let's get started. Prologue. After the devastating battle for Bastiath and the tragic death of General Sorrengail, Violet, still barefoot and without armor, chases Xaden through the dark tunnels of the quadrant. He hides the red rings in his eyes, a sign of having channeled power from the earth, an act that would condemn him if discovered. Guided by her bond with the dragons, Violet follows him to the interrogation chamber, facing soldiers and the fear of losing him. Xaden descends to speak with Jack, the prisoner who knows his secret and threatens to expose him. As she listens, Violet vows to protect Xaden, even if it means defying human laws. Andarna suggests that her ability could be key to saving him. United by their bond and determination, they plan to explore every possible path to find a cure. Violet realizes she must trust Imogen, one of the few she can rely on without endangering Xaden. Chapter 1. Violet Sorrengail patrols with Terran through icy storms over Bastiath while reflecting on her mother's death, the infiltrated venin, and the tense wait to face the scenario. Andarna insists on training despite the risk, but Violet remains firm. The situation is too dangerous. Amid the harsh weather, a scare with Aetrim triggers Terran's protective fury and distrust of Xaden. Back on the ground, Violet discusses the fragility of the truce with Pormiel, tensions between Nivarians and Oricians, and political shifts with her friends. Imogen warns her that some in the group question Xaden's mental state. When Violet reunites with Sawyer in the infirmary, terror strikes. A cadet screams that the venin have killed everyone. Violet reacts instantly, knowing the enemy is already inside the walls. The threat is real and has begun from within. Chapter 2. Violet, Riddick, and Rhea respond to the venin invasion, crossing the infirmary tunnel and finding dried-up bodies in the hallway. They discover the venin have infiltrated disguised as scribes. After killing one, they follow the trail to the dungeons, where they find 3 more venin trying to free Jack Barlow. Violet and Rhea fight with daggers and ice as Violet's power surges. On the brink of danger, shadows fill the room. Xaden arrives and exterminates the enemies. His eyes show no red, but he claims he can sense the venin just as they sense him. Though he fought on the right side, he admits he's changed. Later, on the stairs, he opens up to Violet. He fears becoming one of them. She challenges him and reaffirms her love, but Xaden fears losing control. He confesses he felt the venin's call, and that terrifies him more than any enemy. Chapter 3. The scenario summons Violet and informs her she'll lead a squad to find the 7th dragon lineage. Although she tries to impose a list of demands written by Andarna, Melgren denies her the right to choose her team, assigning Captain Grady as the leader. Violet protests, fearing she'll be separated from Xaden. The meeting turns tense and political, but she secures a promise to study Andarna's conditions. Upon leaving, she receives an ultimatum: 3 days to fulfill her end of the bargain. In her room, Violet wakes with Xaden, who caresses her and gives her pleasure, but stops upon realizing he's unintentionally channeling power. Alarmed, Xaden pulls away, unable to control what's happening. Violet tries to soothe him, but the tension lingers. They both admit that sharing thoughts through the bond is a new kind of intimacy, dangerous nonetheless. They agree to avoid crossing certain boundaries until they regain control. Chapter 4. After the scare of Xaden losing control while channeling, Violet and he discuss the changes he's undergoing and the risks of their bond. Xaden blames himself, but Violet insists on staying by his side. As they get dressed, they talk politics. Duke Lindell, the balance between Navarre and Pormiel, and Orisha's future. Brennan arrives urgently. Violet and Xaden part ways. He heads to a meeting while she speaks with her sister Mira, newly arrived. Mira gives her a disc with manipulated runes to protect the riders, a risky yet revolutionary solution. Hope ignites. It might save the negotiations. Later, Brennan reveals the protections will fall in 6 months. Mira confronts him upon learning that Violet will fly in search of Andarna's species. Violet justifies it. She's doing it for Xaden and for Artia. Brennan leaves with the disc, realizing his only option is to convince the scenario to accept the impossible.
Chapter 5.
As tension between Navarian and Arteon riders intensifies, Violet, Riddick, and Rhiannon await news about the treason accusations following the recent attack. A disturbing rumor spreads through the meeting hall. A first-year rider is being forced into a challenge under threat of death. Outside in the courtyard, Violet encounters an explosive scene led by Aura Beanhaven. Dane tries to intervene, but his authority is questioned. The tension peaks when Aura publicly challenges the riders and threatens execution. Backed by her squad, Violet steps in bravely to stop the fight and protect her companions, proving that unity between riders and dragons is essential. The chapter ends with the professors arriving to restore order, while Violet senses that the fight for alliance will be as perilous as the war itself. Chapter 6. Facing Aura's threat, Violet takes control and unleashes a lightning-charged warning that silences the crowd. With her mastery over lightning, she shows she's ready to defend her peers, even if it means breaking the rules. Her speech moves those present and appeals to the need for unity in the face of a common enemy. The arrival of the professors reinforces her message, urging the cadets to stop fighting each other and focus on the real war. Dane, Brennan, and Mira reveal the tensions in the alliance negotiations, further complicated by Haldan's arrival. As the riders regroup, Xaden confesses to Violet that he's been named Duke of Tyrrendor, a burden that weighs heavily on him. Violet promises to stay alert to any changes in him, and their connection deepens. However, the immediate future will depend on desperate and courageous acts. Chapter 7. Determined to prevent the riders from being expelled, Violet leads a risky nighttime plan to alter the kingdom's protections, defying the scenario's authority. With help from Rhiannon, Riddick, Bodhi, Sawyer, and Marin, they infiltrate the protective stone chamber. Despite his doubts, Sawyer agrees to use his metallurgist seal to alter the rune material. The process is tense and dangerous, but guided by Mira and Brennan, they manage to preserve the protections while allowing the riders to use their magic. Aware of the possible consequences, they still celebrate the success. The next morning, Violet is arrested for high treason. However, when presented to the scenario, Xaden reveals the act occurred before the agreement was signed, ensuring her pardon. Queen Mariah's intervention strengthens Violet's victory, granting access to a key library for future answers. The Alliance has gained a chance. Chapter 8. Violet faces trial for high treason but cleverly declares herself solely responsible for altering the stone, using the already granted pardon to her advantage. The scenario, lacking evidence to condemn others, sets her free. Queen Mariah, impressed by her bravery, grants her access to her personal library, giving Violet hope of finding a cure for Xaden. But the celebration is short-lived. Colonel Eidos, now a general, announces he'll lead Bastiath and vows to make Violet pay for her defiance. Though she confronts him boldly, he reveals his retaliation. He orders her entire squadron to the front lines in Samara, an active war zone. Violet realizes that her choices carry consequences and that, while she's won a battle, the war is only beginning. Protecting her squad will now be her top priority, even if it means risking everything once again. Chapter 9. Violet and her squad arrive exhausted at the Samara fortress after a grueling mission, where they face a landscape ravaged by venin and wyverns. Lieutenant Colonel de Grency informs them the battle is over and assigns them aid duties amid hostility from local riders. Violet leads her team to a room protected by Xaden to rest. A nightmare shakes her, reminding her of her mother's death and her fear of losing loved ones. Upon waking, they learn that the village of Novasala, where Marin's family lives, is in danger. Though Samara's riders refuse to intervene, Violet's squad votes to act on their own. United by loyalty and urgency, they prepare to fly to Novasala, determined to save the civilians despite the consequences.
Chapter 10.
Violet and Taryn fly ahead to Novasala, guided by smoke columns and the urgency to save civilians. While rescuing a fleeing group, they are attacked by wyverns. Violet channels Terran's power to destroy them with lightning, but new attacks follow. In the midst of battle, a powerful venin appears and springs a trap. Terran is wounded by a magical tornado, and they fall down the mountain. Violet, injured in the knee, is rescued by Garrick, who reveals a second hidden seal. Together, they find shelter near Terran and Crad, Garrick's dragon, while the rest of the squad continues the rescue. The venin introduces herself as Theophany and demonstrates terrifying control over lightning, revealing she was hunting Violet and her Irid. After sparing their lives, she disappears. Violet and Garrick confront hidden truths, and their return to Bastiath marks the beginning of new threats and difficult decisions. Chapter 11. After surviving the clash with Theophany, Violet returns wounded to Bastiath with help from Garrick and Terran. Xaden, furious and worried, greets her with a mix of relief and anger. The tension between them is evident, but so is their emotional connection. In the infirmary, Brennan heals Violet's knee while Eidos barges in with strict orders. The squad unites to defend their actions, highlighting their unity against Eidos' authority. Xaden, as Duke of Tyrrendor, protects the rescued children by declaring them Tyrish citizens, defying the order to return them to Poromiel. Later, Violet and Xaden confront their fears. He worries about losing control due to his power, and she seeks a cure before he loses himself. Amid revelations and restrained touches, they reaffirm their mutual commitment as the war and the scenario's decisions drive them further apart. Chapter 12. Violet visits Jack in the underground cell, where he's imprisoned as a venin. His haggard appearance doesn't strip away his arrogance. She offers him alloy to prolong his life in exchange for answers. Jack reveals that venin can sense their own, that new ones are easier to detect, and that they don't always need training to channel. He confirms there is no cure, as they seek not redemption, but power without limits. Violet tries to understand the changes in Xaden and the risk of him losing his soul. Jack takes pleasure in her torment, reminding her of her vulnerability. Violet remains composed, knowing the enemy is more cunning than they thought. She leaves the encounter stronger, determined to find a cure and face the truth, while her squad remains her anchor, ready for whatever comes. The magical war isn't only external, it's also fought within those resisting the darkness. Chapter 13. After being expelled from the Adept Path on January 15th, Jazinia is placed under Grady's command, but doesn't lose her resolve or commitment. Violet, joined by Rhiannon, Riddick, and Sawyer, visits the archives, where the group jokes and strengthens their bonds while reflecting on Violet and Xaden's connection. Jazinia arrives with an armful of books, meeting hostile stares with dignity. She reveals she's been assigned to help with documentation under Grady, but in truth, she'll collaborate directly with Violet. Though information about the Irids is still scarce, Jazinia has found a possible link to a historical uprising and suggests that Violet's father may have hidden key answers in his studies. Meanwhile, the venin are advancing on the continent, and Devera announces new intensive classes, including a crucial manual that everyone must study. The threat of venin with seals is now a certainty. Chapter 14. Xaden's return as SEAL training professor completely shakes Violet. Though they're glad to see each other, the tension over Article 8 of the Code, which forbids relationships between professors and cadets, threatens to separate them. Violet seeks out Dane to ask for help recovering her father's secret studies, hidden behind magical protections. Despite their differences, Dane accepts the risk, proving his loyalty. Meanwhile, Eidos makes it clear to Xaden that he wants him out of Bastiath, rejecting his request for an exemption. The conversation between Xaden and Violet, charged with desire and promises, becomes a struggle against the rules. Despite everything, they agree to meet in secret. Facing her reality, Violet insists she was the one who killed Varish, not Xaden. With Dane willing to infiltrate the general's quarters, the fate of her father's studies lies in uncertain and dangerous hands. Chapter 15. During a new search squad meeting, Violet deals with both internal and external tensions. Xaden storms in, demanding to participate, and Grady is forced to accept him. The team is diverse, made up of riders and officers with various seals, but notably missing are Shields and Southwing members. Violet argues for exploring Deverelli instead of the North, based on lost journals that may point to connections with dragons on the islands. However, Grady enforces his plan. They'll fly north. Meanwhile, constant surveillance prevents Violet from being alone with Xaden, increasing their frustration. The shadows between them continue to flow, charged with desire and confidences. Violet fears her father may have hidden clues that are now crucial, and hope rests on Dane. Despite the tense atmosphere, the two lovers promise they'll find a moment. In the meantime, time is running out, and the continent's fate hangs on uncertain decisions. Chapter 16. In the training pit, Xaden leads the new SEAL combat class, easily defeating all cadets. His mastery of shadows and sharp strategy both impress and terrify. In the end, he challenges Violet, enveloping her in complete darkness. Guided only by their mental bond, she senses his presence and, after intense emotional provocation, unleashes a powerful lightning bolt into the sky, showcasing her strength and control. The class ends with Xaden stating that only Violet could kill him, sparking doubt and curious glances among those present. Later, in Chantera, the group gathers at a tavern, sharing fears, laughter, and concerns about yet unmanifested seals. Dane arrives with a proposal. He will recover Violet's father's studies alone. Though she's skeptical, she agrees. Thus, her fate and the answers she seeks are sealed in a promise that may cost more than they expect. Chapter 17. Violet receives her father's hidden research from Sloane, a thick book protected by a magical mechanism that will destroy its contents if opened with the wrong key. The inscription, "First Love is irreplaceable," leads her to consider various names, but no combination feels safe. Amid training and growing tension with Xaden, Halden appears, her ex-boyfriend and Prince of Navarre, with ambiguous intentions. Tension peaks when a jealous Xaden slams him against a wall with his shadows. Rhea helps Violet unlock the book at the end of the chapter. The key, Aim Sir, reveals her father's personal manuscript with instructions to find a secret weapon in Deverelli and a warning: trust only Mira. The mention of a merchant named Narelle Anselm and an exceptional gift points to the next phase of their mission. Violet keeps the secret and prepares for the journey. Chapter 18. Xaden confronts Violet after her encounter with Halden, demanding to know if she loved him. She admits she did, but insists what she shares with Xaden is incomparable. After a passionate moment, Violet reveals her father's letter urging them to travel to Deverelli. Andarna and Taryn agree it's the best course. They decide to use the search for Andarna's species as a cover, even if it means negotiating with Halden. 4 nights later, the squad flies to Enka, a territory drained by the venin, in search of a magical citron needed for an audience with King Cortland. The operation spirals when Aura, driven by fear, uses her power, igniting the area and accidentally killing Grady. The venin detect the magic and attack. Aura is killed by a wyvern, and the squad barely escapes. Violet and Xaden are rescued by Taryn and return safely, but a message from Theophany found with the citron changes everything. They now know she is close behind. Chapter 19. After Enka is set ablaze by Aura's panic, chaos overtakes the squad. Violet and Xaden narrowly escape thanks to their skills and the intervention of their dragons. Scale eliminates a wyvern, while Taryn pulls off a dramatic rescue. Aura dies brutally, impaled mid-flight. The team returns to Samara with minutes to spare before reaching the critical limit of separation from their dragons. There, Mira gives Violet the citron and a message from Theophany that sets her on high alert. Days later, Violet works tirelessly studying her father's manuscript and books on Deverelli. Riddick surprises everyone by revealing a new ability with his seal. He can freeze water inside the body. Impressed, Violet includes him in the new squad. The scenario attempts to assign her a mission with unfamiliar officers, but Violet defies the orders and demands to choose her own team. In front of everyone, She asserts her leadership and names her true allies. Chapter 20. Violet stands up to the scenario, rejects the imposed mission, and insists on forming her own squad. Halden, Markham, and Eidos try to control her, but she argues forcefully, exposing the futility of trusting a group without cohesion. Mira arrives to support her, and Riddick astonishes them with his new ice manipulation power. Violet selects Xaden, Mira, Riddick, Kat, Captain Cordella, Dane, and Halden for the expedition to Deverelli. Though Duchess Moraine objects, Xaden declares he will go, leaving Llewellyn in charge of his duchy. Violet states she only trusts those who have truly stood by and protected her. Mira asserts her authority by punching Captain Cordella for past mistakes. The chapter ends with Violet reflecting on the importance of trusting only those who have proven loyal, as she prepares for a mission that could change the fate of the continent. Everything is ready to set out in search of answers, family, and hope. Chapter 21. Violet and her group travel tirelessly through Cordon and onto Tecaris, crossing scorched lands and venin-controlled zones. Xaden grows increasingly concerned about the bond and Violet's safety, while the dragons begin to feel the strain. Upon arrival at the palace, Tecaris welcomes the group with a degree of diplomacy, but Prince Halden's presence triggers immediate tension. Exhausted, Violet struggles to climb the stairs, prompting Xaden to carry her, sparking a public confrontation with Halden. The atmosphere grows heavy with physical and emotional fatigue, as Tecaris warns of the risk of losing magical gifts after crossing the ocean. Xaden and Violet share a room, reigniting a closeness that had felt distant. Finally, Tarn and the other dragons take flight toward the coast, while Violet and Xaden brace themselves for the challenges ahead in Deverelli. Chapter 22. The group arrives on the island of Deverelli, immediately facing blistering heat and unfamiliar terrain. The views astonish Violet, though the island's military defenses contradict its reputation for neutrality. Tarn and Andarna suffer from the loss of magic after crossing the ocean, and the disconnect between dragons and riders becomes apparent. Violet discovers she is the only one still able to communicate mentally with her dragons, something that sets her apart and unsettles her. They settle into a luxurious coastal mansion, where Tecaris informs them that only aristocrats may meet with the king. While Halden prepares for the audience, Violet and her team plan to find the mysterious merchant her father mentioned. The loss of powers brings vulnerability, but also an unexpected peace for Xaden, who appears more relaxed than ever. Chapter 23. Violet, Xaden, Mira, and Dane ride through the streets of Matyas toward the market, drawing attention in their black clothing. Xaden is unusually cheerful and relaxed, surprising everyone. The city is vibrant and bustling, filled with merchants, exotic fruits, and lively energy. At the bookshop Books and Legends, Violet asks for Narelle, triggering an attack by several Deverellians. The situation is resolved when Xaden and Mira subdue the attackers. An elderly woman appears, Narelle, grandmother of the aggressors. She recognizes Violet as Asher Sorrengail's daughter and confirms her father left books specifically for her. Tension flares between Xaden and Dane as Narelle reveals that the contents of the books are so vital that she must first test whether Violet is ready to receive them, thus beginning an unexpected trial. Chapter 24. Narelle subjects Violet to 3 questions to test her readiness. Violet answers correctly, revealing that Kravla had promised dragons in a deal with Deverelli during the uprising but failed, leading to the massacre. This revelation shocks everyone, especially Dane and Mira. The final question, why she left Halden, unsettles Violet, who admits she found him in an intimate moment with the professor. Satisfied with her answers, Narelle gives her 6 books written by Asher, protected by a password. Back at the mansion, Violet reflects in the bath on her father and the weight of his legacy. Xaden enters, freshly bathed, and after a charged exchange, kisses her passionately. They give in to the connection between them, ending weeks of restrained tension and marking a new phase in their relationship. Chapter 25. Violet and Xaden finally surrender to the passion they've restrained for 6 weeks, abandoning all self-imposed limits. In a room thick with desire, they rediscover each other through every caress, whisper, and kiss. With no powers interfering, Xaden assures her they can be together without losing control, awakening a fierce need in both. Their intimacy deepens through murmurs of love and stifled moans, culminating in a ravenous and deeply emotional union. However, the calm is disrupted when their friends arrive with urgent news. Halden has been detained by King Cortland, and Tekros requests Xaden's presence as the only aristocrat with palace access. Though frustrated by the interruption, they understand the importance of duty. The chapter ends on a swirl of emotions: unfulfilled longing, looming responsibility, and the weight of the world invading their fleeting moment of peace. Chapter 26. Violet and Xaden fly to Deverelli, where Tarn reveals the pain dragons suffer when far from magic, a consequence previously ignored. Violet feels guilty for not noticing it sooner. The descent to the palace reveals the island's architectural magnificence and a society as sophisticated as it is hostile. Upon landing, they are met by armed guards trying to block their entry. Xaden, asserting his title, introduces himself as a duke and, to Violet's surprise, names her his consort. Inside the palace, they discover that Halden has offered an item that doesn't belong to him, provoking King Cortland's fury. As punishment, the king stabs Halden's hand and feeds Captain Windshire's head to his panthers, an act of cruelty and power. Violet suppresses her shock, and Xaden stays calm while Halden, far from taking responsibility, worsens the situation and endangers them all. Chapter 27. Conflict erupts when the guards attack. Violet and Xaden defend themselves, fighting to survive while avoiding fatalities to preserve a possible alliance. Violet showcases her combat prowess, but Xaden loses control upon seeing her injured. Without magic on the island, he uses shadows, revealing his dangerous transformation. He kills 12 guards with brutal precision. Violet, stunned but composed, shields him by feigning calm before Cortland. Andarna appears holding back a panther, intimidating the king as Violet takes charge of negotiations. She demands immunity for Xaden, secures a diplomatic agreement, and offers Andarna's shell as payment, revealing the existence of a 7th dragon breed. She imposes one condition: Halden is banned from the island. Cortland agrees, both impressed and terrified. The scene ends with Xaden departing for Artia, and Violet, still trembling, preparing to lead the next phase of her mission with her squad. Chapter 28. Back at Bastiath, Violet attends the battle report while battling exhaustion, worry for Xaden, and the upcoming expedition to Unbriel. Halden has jeopardized the mission, but the Deverelli agreement remains intact. Cadets debate the best route across the islands, facing logistical delays. Pressured by Xaden's progression, Violet chooses to disobey orders and won't return between islands until she finds Andarna's species. Bodhi gives her serum and antidote in case Xaden turns a sim. In the training pit, a cadet shows signs of being venin and is executed on the spot by Carr, shocking everyone. Sloane insists on joining the mission, and despite initial resistance, Violet accepts her help with key texts. Xaden returns, his eyes still amber. Though he remains distant in public, the bond between them resurfaces with renewed strength. Chapter 29. After days of preparation, Violet and her squad set off for Unbriel, navigating internal tensions, especially with Halden. The sudden arrival of Eric, her long-lost brother, surprises everyone as he is revealed to be a dragon rider and replaces Halden on the mission. After crossing the open sea and several islands, they arrive at Dun and set up camp in a jungle clearing. While securing the area, Violet talks with Mira about grandmother Niara and family secrets, straining their relationship. The group organizes postcards and reflects on their purpose. At dawn, Unbriel soldiers storm in, demanding they leave the island. Xaden confronts the commander verbally, while Violet stays calm. Eventually, they're given a challenge, a duel to earn an audience with the queen. Eric volunteers, but Xaden insists on fighting himself for everyone's sake. Chapter 30. Unbriel soldiers deny them an audience with the queen but agree to grant one if they win a ritual combat. Xaden steps in as the group's champion, though Eric speaks fluent Umbrian, surprising all. The Queen, disguised as Marlis, watches from the stands as the guard commander names the 3 warriors they must face. Violet, Dane, and Xaden are chosen. Tension mounts when Violet realizes the priestess recognizes her, mentioning a failed consecration and implying her bond with the goddess Dun still lingers. The combat will be 3 simultaneous duels using daggers as the chosen weapon. Dane translates the instructions while Violet wrestles with the pressure and the fear of losing Xaden. The duel will be brutal, and the outcome will determine whether they secure the alliance they desperately need to face the venin. Chapter 31. The confrontation begins, and Violet discovers she must face Marlis, the Queen herself. The 3 duels unfold simultaneously in an ancient plaza as heavy rain falls and tension mounts. Violet displays speed and cunning, managing to unbalance Marlis and keep her under control. Meanwhile, Dane is knocked unconscious, and Xaden is about to be defeated by Costa. In a desperate move, Violet throws a dagger that wounds Costa, saving Xaden. A bolt of lightning strikes the stands, fracturing the stone and stirring fear. Marlis surrenders, and the challenge ends with 2 victories for Violet's team. The soldiers acknowledge their triumph, and the Queen finally reveals herself, agreeing to grant the promised audience. Exhausted emotionally and physically, Violet remains firm, aware of the moment's importance and the sacrifice behind every choice made. Chapter 32. With the duel over, Violet faces Queen Marlis, who praises her skill but questions the reason for their visit. Violet explains they seek the 7th dragon breed and a military alliance. Marlis confirms no fire-breathing dragons have been seen for centuries, disappointing Andarna, but not ruling out cooperation. The Queen allows them to take refuge on her island, but makes it clear that joining the war has a price: dragons. While Xaden tends to Violet's wounds and Dane is treated, Marlis questions the lightning strike that fractured the stands. Though Violet denies involvement, a higher power's implication is evident. Marlis is intrigued and warns them that the island they head toward harbors a mean-spirited vein. With only a tenuous permit and the promise of shelter, the group realizes gaining help will demand more sacrifices than expected. Chapter 33. Violet and Xaden face Queen Marlis of Umbriel, who demands dragon eggs in exchange for an alliance against the venin. Tarn and Scale react furiously to the request, and Violet makes it clear dragons are not commodities. After rejecting the offer, the group moves to the island of Hedotus, a place of unsettling perfection and a community built on knowledge. There, they discover Xaden's mother, Talia, is alive and married to a member of the Triumvirate. The unexpected reunion stirs intense emotions in Xaden, who recalls her abandonment and learns she's built a new family. Violet tries to console and support him while analyzing the island's secrets. Bonds among the group grow, but so do old wounds as they prepare for a trial of wisdom that will determine if they receive assistance. Chapter 34. Xaden sinks into confusion after reuniting with his mother, Talia, who insists on a family dinner to reconnect. Violet balances emotional support with the mission as both face painful memories. Talia reveals parts of her past, attempting to justify her abandonment, but the wound in Xaden runs deep. In an intimate conversation, Violet reminds him of the value of pain and chooses to support him unconditionally. Together, they uncover details about the island and a substance called Villadrita, which alters eye color. Though tension rises between them, their bond strengthens. Violet and Mira begin to suspect the Triumvirate's true intentions and prepare a possible strategy to gain an advantage. The upcoming dinner looms with a mix of hope and distrust, while Talia, unaware that Violet has uncovered her manipulations, continues her approach, offering as a peace symbol the erranment that Brennan had once sent them. Chapter 35. During dinner with the Triumvirate, Violet's group is subjected to a trial disguised as hospitality. Through pointed questions, the leaders assess their wisdom, loyalties, and personal ties. Violet and Xaden endure the verbal attacks, and Kat reveals she once rejected an alliance with Xaden, who now openly declares his love for Violet. The Triumvirate proposes a contractual union to ensure heirs and forge an alliance, but Xaden firmly rejects it, defending his relationship with Violet. The conversation shifts to cultural and strategic matters, highlighting differences between the island and the continent. Suddenly, chaos erupts when Garrick collapses after eating chocolate tart. Violet, Mira, and Xaden react swiftly, realizing they've been poisoned. Tension escalates as they uncover that Ferris of the Triumvirate orchestrated the dinner as a lethal test. Violet vows to make him pay for the attack, determined to save her friend no matter the cost. Chapter 36. Chaos erupts as Garrick collapses from poison. Xaden performs assisted breathing while Violet confronts Ferris, who admits to testing them. With intelligence and cold blood, Violet threatens him with a supposed toxin hidden in the arrowment to obtain the antidote. The Triumvirate begins to show symptoms, and Violet keeps the pressure on, exploiting their fear. Mira takes control of the house's security while Traeger works to stabilize Garrick. Violet and Riddick track down the cook, who tries to flee. In a brutal struggle, Violet wounds him and discovers a blue stain under his nails, a key to identifying the poison. Returning to the kitchen, Riddick is stabbed. Tension peaks as time runs out and Garrick's life hangs by a thread. In the face of danger, Violet leads with determination, stopping at nothing to save her team and confront the betrayal of those who put them to the test. Chapter 37. Amid the tension in Hedotus, Violet and Riddick discover that Garrick has been poisoned with fermented Zakia berries, a deadly toxin. Violet recalls her father's notes and urgently orders figs to counteract the effect. After tense moments, Garrick survives, but tensions explode when Xaden, enraged, tries to kill Ferris, the one responsible. Violet stops him by appealing to his humanity. Displaying cunning, Violet negotiates with Ferris using a veiled threat against his children and reveals the use of arrowment as a chemical weapon. Ferris gives in and agrees to the alliance. The group flies northwest, exhausted and still without having found the Irids. Guilt and uncertainty weigh on Violet, who fears she may have led them all to certain death as they head towards Zahilna, their next desperate hope. Chapter 38. Upon arriving in Zahilna, the squad is welcomed by a cheering crowd. Calixta, their host, explains that they must participate in a gift ritual assigned by Zinel, god of fortune. Violet and her team agree, knowing a crucial alliance is at stake. Each member receives a strange or symbolic gift, from wine and slaps to a broken compass. The mood stays light until Traeger draws his card, the arrow. A real arrow pierces his heart, killing him instantly before everyone's stunned eyes. Silarain, his griffin, dies as well. Devastated, Violet holds back her grief and thanks them for the gift, knowing any emotional reaction would ruin the potential alliance. Hours later, the Queen agrees to negotiate. Zahilna will send military support. Though they've gained an army, the price is tragic. The group, broken-hearted, chooses to spend the night beside Traeger and Silarain's bodies. Chapter 39. The group keeps vigil overnight beside Traeger and Silarain's bodies. Kat, shattered for convincing him to join, demands their remains not be left in Zahilna. Still in shock, Violet embraces her role as leader. The next morning, the squad flies to a small, uncharted island and builds a funeral pyre. The grief is deep, but their resolve grows. As the others rest, Violet confides in Xaden about her insecurities. He reminds her she was chosen by Tern, a general dragon, and is meant to lead. Though battling his own internal darkness, he tells her he trusts her to guide them. Violet finally accepts that her place is at the front, not out of desire, but out of necessity. Despite physical and emotional exhaustion, she vows to keep going, knowing only by doing so can they win the war and save those they love. Chapter 40. The squad splits up to explore new islands, hoping to find the Irids. After a night of mourning, they burn Traeger and Silarain's bodies on a volcanic island where magic subtly pulses. Violet organizes teams to scout each sector, staying behind with Riddick so Andarna can rest. Though weary, everyone accepts her leadership. Xaden and Violet part with tenderness, worried about the growing dark power inside him. On the beach, Riddick and his dragon Aetrum joke, but the mood shifts when the ground trembles. An irid dragon emerges from the sand before Violet, followed by 5 more. All bow their heads, acknowledging her. Andarna awakens and watches. Frozen between awe and fear, Violet realizes the impossible has happened. The Irids have found them. The moment culminates in a mental connection with the lead dragon, who says, "Hello, human." Chapter 41. Violet and Riddick find themselves surrounded by 6 Irid dragons who, to their surprise, can speak and show interest in Andarna. The atmosphere is tense until Tarn and Aetrum land to protect Violet. Andarna declares that the dragons present are her family, though she barely knows them. As she recounts her story, her bond with Violet, the war games, and the use of her gift, the Irids listen with growing unease. Although Andarna feels proud of her choices, the Irids see her bond as an abomination. The situation becomes more hostile when they discover her tale differs from their species. Ultimately, they reveal the evaluation wasn't for Andarna, but for Violet, whom they deem guilty of corrupting the young dragon. The rejection is clear. Andarna is not welcome on their island nor to receive instruction. The family she longed to meet has turned her away. Chapter 42. The Irids' judgment ends in a painful denial. They believe Violet has corrupted Andarna, turning her into a weapon rather than a creature of peace. Despite Andarna's pleas, they refuse to help in the war or share knowledge about the venin, insisting there is no cure because the soul dies in the power exchange. When Xaden and Garrick arrive, tension rises upon seeing Xaden's red eyes, a sign of his transformation. The bond between him and Violet becomes an obstacle in gaining the Irid support. Though one of them, Leo, then shows some empathy, the majority rule that Andarna will not be accepted among their kind. After their departure, the bond fills with pain and shame. Violet tries to comfort Andarna, but the young dragon isolates herself. The threat of theophany becomes increasingly real and imminent. Chapter 43. Back at camp, Violet and Riddick step away to talk in private. She confides the truth about Xaden's condition. He is turning into a venin. Though Riddick reacts with anger and fear, he demands a clear boundary to justify keeping the secret. Through tears and fear, Violet admits that only if Xaden ever harms her or someone she loves would she consider him lost. Riddick accepts that boundary and promises to keep the secret, provided they also tell Rhiannon, Sawyer, and Jazinia. Later, Xaden confronts Violet about the failed mission and his part in it. He believes his condition prevented success. She reassures him of her love without giving in to guilt. Upon returning to Bastiath, they're greeted with emotional reunions and painful losses. The group learns Sunniva has fallen, and Queen Mariah is dead. The consequences of failure are devastating and deeply personal. Chapter 44. Leaders interrogate Violet and her group for hours, but King Towery helps them avoid punishment. As classes resume, they learn that the venin's advance has been unstoppable. In Battle Report, they analyze Sunniva's fall, a surprise attack from within a storm, led by a lightning manipulator, likely a maven. Violet realizes it was theophany, and the horror sinks in. Meanwhile, Riddick convinces Violet to tell Jazinia, Rhi, and Sawyer the truth. In the archives, Sawyer struggles with doubts about flying again using a prosthetic. Finally, in a private room, Violet reveals the secret she's long hidden. Xaden is turning into a venin. The revelation strikes like lightning among her friends. What began as a mission of hope has now become a race against time to save not just the continent, but also the man she loves. Chapter 45. Violet wakes from a nightmare where the Wise One subdues her and Drathus burns under blue fire. Though she knows he is dead, she fears Theophany's reach. Tension with Xaden lingers, but she tries to reconnect by writing to him. During a combat mount drill, Violet confronts her fear and executes a risky yet successful maneuver thanks to Tarn's guidance. The move involves leaping into the void, facing the target, and soaring back up. Xaden's joy at seeing her succeed leads to a tender gesture, Violet gives him an onyx bracelet with a stone from her home. However, concern deepens when Felix returns with alarming news. The wards are failing, and wyverns are approaching Artia. Violet immediately begins training with Felix, fully aware that time to prepare is running out. Chapter 46. The situation at the front worsens as Violet trains intensely with Felix. Xaden has been summoned to Tyrande and is absent for over 10 days, heightening the tension. In the Great Hall, a conflict erupts between Llewellyn, the Duke of Calder, and Prince Haldan over whether to open the borders to civilians. Xaden storms in with authority, declaring that Tyrande will open its borders. Haldan threatens to send troops to the province, but Xaden confronts him, backed even by Eric. Tensions peak when Lynx unexpectedly manifests a shadow seal, confirming Xaden is no longer the only one with this power. This destabilizes Xaden, who considers resigning and leaving. Violet confronts him, begging him to stay, reminding him of their bond and what's at stake. But feeling out of control, he departs. Llewellyn reminds Violet of the weight of loving someone with power, while she reaffirms her commitment to Xaden and Tyrande. Chapter 47. At the flight field, Violet helps Sawyer mount Slysag again after his injury. He has designed a prosthetic adapted for climbing his dragon, but his attempts fail until Slysag finally offers an angled claw, proving their unbreakable bond. Andarna, still distant, shows progress by offering help, and Violet gently encourages her. Rhys feels guilty for not helping more, but Violet reassures her that simply being there is enough. The whole squad celebrates the emotional victory when Sawyer finally sits back in the saddle, restoring his confidence. The group travels to Artia, and arriving at Ryerson House brings Violet a mix of nostalgia and comfort. Brennan appears and reveals he hasn't been able to repair Xaden but confirms he's still fighting. A recent letter proves Xaden hasn't given up, renewing Violet's hope as she prepares for what's next. Chapter 48. Violet is alone in her room, working with runes and reflecting on her training and the weakening of the wards. Xaden, soaked and exhausted, appears unexpectedly. After 73 days since his last channeling, he confesses he has remained stable and hasn't lost control. Violet welcomes him with open arms and heart, and they surrender to the passion they've held back for weeks. Despite fear, Xaden chooses to risk staying with her, acknowledging his internal struggle and his need to keep fighting for their bond. The scene is intense and filled with desire, but also marked by vulnerability and mutual commitment. Violet reaffirms her love and reminds him it's her choice to take the risk for him. The chapter ends with a silent promise. Despite the shadows, they'll keep fighting together, trusting that hope is their strongest weapon. Chapter 49. Violet and Xaden give themselves fully to each other, leaving behind doubt and fear. Their passion reaches new depths as they undress with desperation, exploring each other with hunger and devotion. He takes her on the couch, holding her with shadows that prevent her from touching him, worshipping her with disarming intensity. Violet accepts it all, even the waiting, until he finally enters her, and together they reach a connection so deep it unleashes storms. When he fears losing control, she reminds him she trusts him, that his power is hers too. She urges him to let go, sharing their pleasure through their bond. In the darkness, they break and rebuild each other in gasps, shadows, and lightning. Exhausted but united, Xaden lifts her in his arms, promising more. Violet, ignoring all responsibilities, gladly loses herself with him between the bath, the closet, and their shared bed. Chapter 50. Violet dreams of Drathus, a field, and the terrifying figure of the Wise One, who demands something she doesn't understand. Trapped by his icy fingers, she can't channel her magic and wakes up on the verge of collapse. Xaden also suffers a similar nightmare and wakes startled. They soon discover they've been sharing the same dream since Rezsun. Comparing details, they conclude they aren't mere coincidences. Violet recounts a vivid memory with Marin, which appears to be real. Xaden suspects she is entering others' dreams, a rare ability known as Onyronaut, a dangerous form of being an intincist. Though Violet denies it, She remembers this power could stem from her bond with Andarna. Upon verifying a portrait with Marin, they confirm the dreams are real. Everything is interrupted when Taryn warns of an approaching horde. The danger forces them to set aside their discoveries. They're under attack. Chapter 51. Alarms ring out as the city prepares for battle. Violet and Xaden arm themselves quickly, while riders deploy under their command. Brennan confirms the patrol has been overwhelmed and the threat approaches from the east. Despite a lack of veteran riders and dragons, Xaden organizes an improvised defense. Violet insists on fighting and is assigned to guard the walls, while Bodhi, Xaden's cousin, is sidelined due to being Tyrander's heir. During the aerial battle, Violet flies over the city with Rhiannon and Taryn, facing off against groups of incoming wyverns. She uses her lightning to light the sky and burn enemies, though it drains her physically. The situation becomes critical when they spot wyverns heading low toward the Temple of Dun, where Andarna has gone under Eric's orders. Violet and Taryn dive to the rescue. Chapter 52. At the Temple of Dun, Violet finds Andarna defending the entrance alongside armed acolytes. The young dragon, disobeying orders, insists on protecting the site at Prince Eric's request. Taryn is wounded, and Violet, with Rhiannon's help, removes a poison spur. As they prepare an improvised defense, Theophany appears with venin, demanding Violet's surrender or she'll destroy everything. The High Priestess joins Violet, revealing a mysterious link to the temple and a physical connection marked by silver strands in her hair. Andarna breathes fire but fails to wound Theophany, who escapes with her followers just before more wyverns arrive. Violet uses her power to bring one down, but the rest press on. Scale, Xaden, and Leo then arrive just in time to assist. As the wyverns nearly break through, the city's protective wards activate. Leo then, an ancient Irid, confirms he triggered them. The Irids have arrived at the crucial moment. Chapter 53. After the battle, Leo then reveals his direct bloodline connection to Andarna and offers to take her with him to teach her the ways of the Irids. Though Violet fights the idea, she understands that Andarna needs to discover who she is beyond their bond. Leo then proposes to sever their connection, asserting that as an Irid, Andarna can shape magic as she chooses. Given the chance at a life without war, Andarna agrees. Devastated, Violet gives her permission to go, putting Andarna's well-being first. The bond breaks suddenly, and Andarna flies off with Leo then. Violet collapses from the pain of the separation, unable to breathe or think. Only Taryn's bond and Xaden's presence anchor her. Surrounded by loved ones, Violet can barely whisper the unthinkable. Andarna is gone. The loss tears at her soul, leaving a void that threatens to consume her. Chapter 54. Violet spends 3 days in apathy, unable to leave her bed after Andarna's departure. Taryn keeps their bond open to support her, and Xaden stays silently at her side, while friends keep her company without pressuring her to speak. The grief overwhelms her until Mira arrives and urges her to move forward. With firm love, her sister reminds her that she cannot remain paralyzed forever. Brennan and Mira argue about their family's past and reveal that Violet was taken as a child to be consecrated at a temple, an act that may have shaped her destiny. Things begin to fall into place when Mira suggests her path may have been foretold by prophecy. Violet faces the fear of being seen as a threat. Xaden, in a moment of unconditional love, blames himself and admits he is the dark being mentioned, protecting her once again. Chapter 55. Despite her emotional fragility, Violet returns to rune classes and valley training, forcing herself to regain control of her power. Her bond with Taryn remains strong, but her magic is far harder to manage without Andarna. After failed attempts and Quinn's advice, she begins learning how to temper runes with the brute strength her new magic requires. Meanwhile, political tensions rise. Tyrander cuts off Palladium supplies, crippling Navarre and risking war. Violet trains to exhaustion, determined to make up for her loss. Brennan urges her to slow down, but she refuses. Xaden and Bodhi argue about the duchy's future and reveal that Xaden is training his cousin as a potential successor. Violet faces the possibility of a future without Xaden, while he secretly plans to protect her at all costs. Chapter 56. Violet accidentally enters Xaden's dream, where the Wise One has him trapped. Realizing she's inside his mind, she wounds herself with a dagger to break the illusion and wake them both. Shaken, they're interrupted by Garrick, gravely wounded, bearing a massive scale on his back. Theophany let him escape to deliver a message. They have 5 hours to hand over Violet and Bodhi, or someone will die. Panic sets in as Violet and Xaden recognize the scale belongs to Tane, meaning Mira has been captured. Violet feels everything now makes sense. The threat from the Wise One in her dream was real. Torn between duty and family, she's faced with a gut-wrenching choice. The chapter ends with a terrifying certainty. Her sister is in the hands of the enemy. Chapter 57. Violet faces an impossible decision when she learns that Theophany has captured Mira and threatens to destroy Drathis and massacre civilians as she escapes. At the assembly, riders and officers argue over options, but Violet can only think of her sister. Brennan insists she must choose one objective. They can't save everything. After tense deliberation, Violet chooses to confront Theophany directly, understanding the real threat is the Dark Being. Xaden insists on going with her, and the squad volunteers. Aware of the sacrifice required of a leader, Violet accepts that she can't protect everyone. The plan is made, and the armory opens. With fear and resolve, she heads into battle, knowing the confrontation with Theophany will test not just her power, but her ability to make impossible choices. Chapter 58. Violet and her team arrive at Drathis' northern field, where Theophany holds Mira and the dragon Tane captive, the latter wounded and chained. Tension rises as wyverns surround the city, but the field remains undrained. While Xaden, Brennan, and Bodhi position themselves, Violet attempts to negotiate, bringing Jack as demanded. But Theophany makes it clear her promises never included Myra's safety. In a cruel act, she slits Myra's throat, sparking chaos and fury. Battle erupts. Violet rushes to Mira, clinging to hope. Brennan gives all his strength to heal her, but it's not enough. Then Sloane, sent by Eric with a mysterious package, channels Dane's power to reinforce Brennan, stabilizing Mira. As Tane falls unconscious, Taryn agrees to fly him to safety, leaving Violet and Bodhi behind with Theophany still looming. Chapter 59. Myra's life hangs by a thread. Covered in blood, Violet pleads for help. Brennan, near collapse, keeps pressure on the wound, but his power is fading. Sloane, guided by courage and Dane's instructions, channels energy between Dane and Brennan, stabilizing Mira. Chaos rages. Wyverns attack, dragons defend, and Jack's chest is safely extracted. Sloane and Dane retreat, and Xaden flies into battle with Scale. Brennan takes Mira, leaving Violet with Bodhi. She retrieves Eric's mysterious package and notices neither Brennan nor Dane bear the god's marks. Taryn, bound by promise, leaves with Tane. Violet, now alone with Bodhi, prepares to face Theophany. She accepts her role as leader, knowing she must be the decoy to save the city, without her dragon. Chapter 60. With Taryn gone and Tane in tow, Violet remains with Bodhi as Theophany approaches. The venin appears, wielding not lightning, but the true source of storms. Violet, powerless, realizes she misread her enemy's seal. Theophany unleashes a growing tempest, revealing she was created as an answer to Violet's mother. As Bodhi tries in vain to counter her, Violet sees his power won't stop such a force. She orders him to flee, fulfilling his promise to Xaden. Queer drags him away. Alone, Violet faces Theophany with cunning, using an explosive arrow to wound her, then attacks in hand-to-hand combat. Amid the chaos, as Theophany gains the upper hand, Violet sacrifices her position to protect the innocent. Because in the end, the true hero is Mira. Chapter 61. Rhiannon faces an imminent threat as she tries to defend Madero Pass with a diminished squad. The storm has forced the dragons to land, and civilians are trapped in panic and rain. With only 3 dragons and 4 griffins against 17 wyverns, Rhiannon arranges her forces in a spine formation to intercept them away from the cliff. Fierge attacks fiercely, taking down enemies with fire and fangs. Riddick proves his bravery by neutralizing a wyvern midair using his gift. As the battle intensifies, Rhiannon watches in concern as some wyverns break through their defenses and attack civilians. With no time for mourning, she orders a regroup and adopts a shield formation to stop the slaughter. Though her team is incomplete, she trusts in the collective strength of the squad. They will defend the pass at all costs, even if rain and chaos surround them. Chapter 62. Violet, alone and threatened by Theophany, escapes death using cunning and her surroundings. She climbs over a dead wyvern just before magical desiccation reaches her. At the last moment, Scale appears and throws her into the sky, where Tarn finally catches her. Together, they return to the battle-devastating Drathis. Violet unleashes lightning on the wyvern horde, guided by Tarn, destroying multiple enemies with massive electric attacks. However, her body begins to fail under the power overload. The city's situation is desperate, but reinforcements from Zahilna are on the way. Tarn and Violet fly toward the venin, and as they approach Theophany, she summons a tornado with deadly precision that threatens to split Drathis. Time is running out, and with every strike, Violet nears the physical and emotional limit of her magic. They must stop Theophany before it's too late. Chapter 63. Imogen flies over Drathis with Glain, facing chaos and rain as she fights to save Bodhi and defend the city. Despite orders, she disobeys to help Quinn, who is in danger at the North Tower. Alongside Eidos, she confronts several venin on the walls. One creature escapes toward the tower, and upon following, Imogen finds Quinn gravely wounded after saving civilians and infants. Quinn has been stabbed by a poison dagger, and her strength fades. In her final moments, she asks Imogen to tell Jax how much she loves him. Imogen comforts her as her best friend dies in her arms, promising that everyone will know who she was. Devastated but resolute, she offers her last dagger to the cause and orders all riders to regroup inside the walls. She knows that if Violet fails to win, all they've sacrificed will have been for nothing. Chapter 64. Violet and Tarn chase Theophany to the edge of the forest, where a massive tornado lures them into a trap. A huge net brings them down violently. Tarn is trapped, and Violet is forced to escape alone to protect him. While trying to free him, she finds a marble dagger sent by Eric, accompanied by a note referencing Dun. Theophany appears and corners them. Violet attempts to strike with lightning, but her conduit fails, and she misses repeatedly. Just as she nears defeat, the sky goes completely dark. Xaden has unleashed the full extent of his shadow by merging with Scale. In the darkness, Violet recalls Eric's warning and draws the sacred dagger. She illuminates Theophany with a lightning strike, leaps, and stabs her in the heart. Theophany desiccates, defeated by the goddess's wrath. Violet collapses, consumed by the power. Chapter 65. Xaden watches in fury as Scale is captured and trapped in a net, while a new venin rider, his initiation brother, protects the enemy dragon. Berwyn, his former sage, brutally kills a dragon with a dagger and threatens to do the same to Scale. On the verge of despair, Xaden surrenders entirely to the dark power inside him. He releases devastating shadows that wipe out the venin, the wyverns, and every enemy from Drathis to the canyon. He breaks Scale's net, saves his friends, but sacrifices part of himself. His bond with Violet, his only anchor, keeps him tied to his humanity as his soul begins to disintegrate. Exhausted but resolute, he plans to ask Violet for help, for his one chance at redemption. He knows everything now depends on her, on Tarn, and on a promise that could save him, or doom him completely. Chapter 66. Violet wakes up confused in the courtyard of House Ryerson under the moonlight. Her mind is clouded, and she doesn't remember the last hours. Imogen and Brennan are with her and inform her of deaths, missing dragon eggs, and a massacre attributed to Xaden. Shocked, Violet discovers her arm is broken, and she's wearing a ring identical to the Artia dagger gems. Brennan opens a scroll bearing Dunn's seal and confirms the unthinkable. She is legally married to Xaden, under an official blessing from the High Priestess. Xaden's handwritten note reads only, "Don't look for me. It's yours now." Violet, in shock, doesn't understand how she got there or why she can't remember her wedding. She senses someone has manipulated her memory. When she demands answers from Imogen, the latter admits she only fulfilled a prior request from Violet. Something has changed forever, but she still doesn't know what or why. And that brings us to the end of Onyx Storm. Thanks so much for watching the summary. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Now I want to hear from you. What surprised you most? Which character won your heart?